Castle does, and bringing Subnautica. What? Bringing the Subnautica. Okay, so all focus now has been, I'm focusing at this point now on gameplay. All of the experimenting and everything that was going on before has come to an end. I've experimented enough. I know what can and cannot be done with the tech. So I'm now focusing on doing examples of gameplay in the starting area of the game. So this is a different designer's area, and I'm just working with the entity placement. Currently, we still don't have the entities broken up into separate files so that it doesn't conflict. So any model work that he does will currently conflict with what I'm currently doing in this. But it's a separate branch, and it's only used as an example. We're trying to figure out how to disperse the entity placement. So I spent a good amount of time here just focusing on getting like grouping of entities for the current spawn system. The spawn system right now is something that I feel needs a lot of work. Like during the recording of this, I wasn't even fully aware of the entire process of everything that's going on. I am now fully aware of everything that's going on with the spawning system. When I first started this, though, I had a lot to learn about the inner workings of it. At this point in time, I'm merely just making sure that the entities are correct, because there was all kinds of stuff going on as far as whether or not they were even the right ones wasn't happening. So that's a pretty big deal. One of the main complaints about the game right now is that there's not enough stuff. There's not enough creatures. There's not enough loot, and that is a very big deal. Like, we have to fix that, and that is exactly what I'm working towards at this point in time. But having to try different things are the first steps towards it. I learned from this that this solution doesn't really solve the problem. We thought maybe it would be the easy way to do it. It doesn't. So the next thing I decided to do is, in the next video, is manual placement. No random spawning of anything. Everything is to be placed manually, by hand, with 100% spawning chance. And then we're going to replicate that feeling into the spawning system. For right now, the grouping of the entities and everything like that didn't really make that much of a difference. Just, I don't know. So this ends up coming into a lot of things. I've messed around a lot with spawning systems in different open world games. When I worked on IWS, for example, increased wasteland spawns in Fallout New Vegas, all I did was I focused on spawning and random chance spawning and modifying like what spawns what. In that case, I ended up doing a programmatic solution, in which case I find if something's already spawned there, I add more or remove things. But then that was also to be combined with manual placement. In Fallout New Vegas, I went through the entire open world environment and reworked every spawn by hand. I actually, if you don't even use the script that adds or removes spawns, you'll actually still get the results of a completely reworked spawning system, or a completely by hand level designer reworked spawning of everything. The density of the spawns, the chances of those objects spawning. Normally how it works is you have a generic spawn point that can spawn one of 5 things, right? That is currently not what we have. So there are things that I know that work in other game engines that we're currently not doing at this point in time, but I don't want to just step in and be that guy who's like, fuck this, I want to give it a shot. I want to see maybe it's different for our game, because our game is a bit different. We're not to be compared with Skyrim and Fallout New Vegas, but I enjoy modding those games in the past, and I've done a lot with open world development in the past. But um, maybe just to give it a shot and see. So I did as much as I could to bunch together spawning, making sure that different types of nodes were spawning in together, and I added maybe 100 of these spawn points. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, well, this isn't going to work, because if this is just 4 batches that are around the player start, and there's over 100 spawn points, the game world in Subnautica is massive. It's gigantic. It's probably one of the biggest open world environments I've ever seen. Honestly, it's ginormous. If you look at all of the world space that we can potentially fill up, not so much just the environment that releases with the game, but what we can do when you account for the underground worlds, the above water, like, it's ridiculous. We can't blanket every single one of these batches with spawn points to that degree. I guess ultimately we'll end up doing something like that, but if you look at the spawning in Skyrim, there'll be like, you'll have a cell with 1 spawn point, and then it's a creature that can spawn it's a spawn point that can spawn one of 5 different creatures, and it's just like one of them out in the middle of a gigantic cell. And then you go to another one, and it'll just be like 1 spawn point. There'll actually be points in time where there is just 1 spawn, or maybe 2 or 3 at the most, and in a giant flat open environment where there's 3 spawn points. But we're definitely you see all these green boxes. Each of these green boxes is a spawn point for loot. Hmm. Mm -mm -mm. So these separate branches that I'm creating are just that. They're experiments. This is more experimentation and figuring out what to do as far as what's going to work best. I really want to push this, and I make it very clear to the rest of the team, and I say, I want to own this and see what we can do to get it working right. And um, and have it be something that I'm invested in, because it's extremely important. This is a core element to the game. So unfortunately, the bunching up of entities doesn't really work. Not, I'm not terribly surprised, because the bunching up is merely just simulating what this sort of spawning. You have 1 entity that can spawn one of 5 things, or you have 3 entities that can spawn 1 thing, or nothing. And that doesn't. I don't know. I don't think the reverse actually works. Doesn't work, or maybe it does. It doesn't seem to, unless maybe there's some kind of. Yeah. At this point, I'm just thinking out loud, for which I'm sorry. It's difficult. It's difficult to get this kind of stuff right, and a lot of the time you just sit there thinking about it. Like, okay, well, what is the best way to attack this problem? How do we solve it? How do we make sure that there's X amount of bullshit that the player actually sees? because I mean you can have all the cool stuff in the world. One of the things that was always surprising to me when I was working with Fallout New Vegas's creature spawning is that you're not really increasing the number of spawn creatures. You're increasing the number of spawn things that the player actually sees. You actually be shocked the amount of crap that is spawned in the world that you don't see because it's behind stuff, or it's underneath you, or it's in a building somewhere, or like the number of actual things. You could be looking at a vast empty wasteland, which, let's be honest, Fallout New Vegas mostly was. If you actually went through a debugging tool and saw all of the things that were spawned there was actually a lot of stuff going on. You just didn't see it. And ultimately, all that matters is what the player sees and experiences. Doesn't matter how many things get spawned off to the side. At this point, I'm just ranting. Anyway, thank you for watching.
Have a taste of the world, it's all for sale. Just name your price, we'll be on our way. There's no silver date, it just spoils. Same shit, a different day.